So good morning. You guys doing good? I'm doing good. Well, I'm going to start off by telling you a little story. There was a man and a woman that were sitting in a cafe. They were having coffee, but they were having a conversation about freedom, all different aspects and levels of freedom. They had a lot of back and forth, and it even got a little bit heated at times. At the end of the conversation, the woman turns to the man and says, "Look, all I know is that in America, we're all free." There was a little boy that was next to them. He came over and told the lady, "Excuse me, but I'm not free. I'm 4." So that's what we're going to talk about. What does it mean to be free? What does that mean? Immediately, I think about, not being in prison or not being enslaved of some form. But I think that to me, it goes much deeper than that. It's my freedom to be. My freedom to be who I am. My freedom to think, to act, to speak, without any hindrance and without any restraints. But what hinders us? How do we identify what's restraining us? I have a couple of ideas and I want to suggest them to you. I think if we can go back into our story, into our history, and I don't mean just our own personal story. I'm talking about our family history. If we go back to your mom and dad, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, and if we can start just uncovering some of the stories, if we can just focus on your triad, there's you, your mom, and your dad. That dynamic right there. How was it? How was your life for your mom when she was pregnant with you? What was going on in that situation? How was her relationship with her husband, with your soon-to-be dad? What was going on there? Was there any anxiety? Was there any uncertainty? Was there any fears? If you're the firstborn, it's her first time about to be a mom. I know for a fact that when my mom was 6 months pregnant with me, she experienced a lot of uncertainty and fear. My father passed out in front of her, epilepsy attack. My mom's never experienced anything like that. And I did a regression, but not a hypnosis regression, a meditation regression. And I was taken back to that very moment. And I cried the pain that my mother was feeling. I was 6 months in her belly. So we do feel those things. Then once you discover what happened there, go to another triad. Go to your mom, and her dad. What was that dynamic? Go to your dad, his mom, and his dad. What was that dynamic? Go as far back as you can and start discovering the stories. I was having a conversation with Kent over July 4th, and I told him that science can now prove or have found evidence in our DNA that there's stuff there 4 generations back in our DNA. They can prove that now. And he was like, "Well, did you know that was in the Bible?" I said, "Really? There's a scripture." What was the scripture? In the Bible. And science is discovering that now. That what happens 4 generations back impacts you. Consequentially, what you do now impacts 4 generations down the road. Okay? So, do you even know? Think about this. Your parents are 2. Your grandparents are 4. Your great-grandparents are 8. And the further and further back you go, it keeps doubling and doubling and doubling. And pretty soon, you're going to be in the thousands. Pretty soon, the further back you go, the entire story of humanity is in you, like an imprint. And it's all affecting you. What was the social environment for your parents? What was the social environment for your grandparents? What did they do for a living? What were their difficulties? Were there any secrets or things that the family was ashamed of? Maybe somebody was raped. Maybe somebody died of some weird disease and you have no idea. And the thing about it is going back isn't so you can change the past. It's so that you can change the person you are today and the person who you're becoming. And simply by uncovering the stories, by listening to the stories, you already begin to lift its effects on you just by talking about it. Because it's all energy. It's always there. So if you can bring awareness to it, you begin to understand. And that's the whole point of going back, is so that we can understand. If you don't know what you need to free yourself from, how are you going to know? If you don't go back and ask the questions, if you don't go back and find the stories, how are you going to know what you need to free yourself from? You really won't. Now, what can we do? What can I do? I'm going to break my habits. Because if it's in me, it's coming through me in my actions, in my decisions, in my choices. So I'm going to break my habits. We live in cycles of habits. Physical cycles, mental, emotional, sexual, spiritual cycles of habits. Okay? And immediately, as soon as we're born, we're put into those cycles. By our parents, by society, our schools, we just immediately get put into those cycles. But we got to break them. The moment you begin to do something different, something you say, this is not like me, your healing starts. Because you begin to break the cycle. Okay? The moment that you're willing to step out of yourself, out of your box. And those cycles, that's what they are. Like Luis talked about last week, freedom from the box you're in. Those are the boxes that we put ourselves in. So if you're willing to step out of the box and do something that you've never done before, you'll break the cycles. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you know what is the most limiting box that you're in? Anybody have a clue? Want to take a guess? Your mind? Yeah. Your beliefs? Yes. Yourself. You are the most limiting box that you're in. The person that you think and say you are. And that includes your mind. That includes your beliefs. Correct? Now, if you're not willing to step out of yourself, like I said, if you're willing to step out of yourself, if you're willing to do something different, if you're willing to break the habits, you'll begin to heal. Okay? But if you're not willing to do that, life is going to put you in situations that are going to force you to do that. If you're not willing to do it on your own. And these are the moments these are difficult moments in our lives. And I got to tell you, for me, now, over my spiritual journey, my difficult moments have been as important, if not more important, than my good moments. And the reason I say that is because they play such a huge role in my spiritual journey, in my spiritual unfolding. As I discovered my truth, they were so important. Okay, all right. And the thing about those moments is that there's a transformative quality within those moments. Okay, but we don't know to look for that. We're not taught this. So when it comes, we don't know what to do with it. It just becomes another moment of pain and suffering in our lives, instead of an opportunity for transformation and change to occur. Now, how do we do that? It's great. We got to change our habits. We got to break our habits. But how do we start that? Well, I can give you a suggestion on what I did. I told myself, I'm going to do the opposite of what my instinctual reaction is. Okay? If instinctually I want to yell, I'm going to do the opposite. Maybe I don't even say anything at all. There were so many times that I had to fight my need to say, I just have to say something. If I don't say something, they're not going to know. I have to say. Okay? So I would stop myself. Okay? If my instinct was to say, oh, well, I gotta figure out a way I gotta do this one action to get this one thing. Well, maybe don't do anything at all. Maybe do the opposite of that action. Okay? So I just began to, if I wanted to say no to something, I said yes. And if instinctually I wanted to say yes, well, maybe I said no. And that was helpful, but it was just to break the cycle. I just did something extreme to break out of my cycles, my knee-jerk reactions, my instinctual choices and decisions that I was doing that had gotten me the result that I had gotten for 30 years. The same result, the same result, the same result. So I had to go to the other extreme. That's kind of how I learn. I go from one extreme to another extreme, and then I find the middle. Okay? So I did that. But it really wasn't until I began to take ownership of those difficult moments, of my life, really, when I began to ask myself, what did I do to get myself here? What part did I play here? That's when I really started to really notice a change in my life. And that's the real difficult part right there, that we're not willing to do that. And so we're not willing to take ownership, then we're not really willing to do any personal development work because we're not willing to take ownership. What do? We blame other people or circumstances as if there's some cause or some external force causing this result. Something out there that has nothing to do with me. Okay, and we know that's not true. Because what are we saying when we're blaming? Really, what we're saying is we're giving the credit to someone or something externally for all the bad in our lives. We're giving them the credit. But if you're going to do that, then you might as well give them the credit for all the good in your life, because clearly you had nothing to do with that either. You didn't. If you're going to blame for the bad. Because what you're saying is, I'd rather just keep my story of I can't, of I'm stuck, I'm hopeless. Okay? It's those stories again. Here comes the stories. As you do this work, what you notice is that the stories repeat themselves. I found a story from my great-grandfather, which is my grandfather's father and his wife. And that story repeated in my grandfather and his wife. And that story repeated in his son, which is my uncle and his wife. And that story repeated in me and my wife. Same story. They repeat themselves. I found a letter. My mom found a letter that he wrote her. It was so interesting. As you uncover this stuff, what you find. And think about these stories. Well, my grandfather died of this disease, and my father died of this disease, so I just hope I don't get it. Or my mother did this way, or she had kids at 22, and I'll probably have kids at 22, more than likely. We just begin to take on the stories, and we buy into the stories, and we make them our own, even though they're not our own. There's somebody else's story. Did y'all know that you can literally affect your DNA with your emotions and your stress and what you think? If you're in a constant negative state of stress, which, by the way, to me, what I've found so far is that stress is like a petri dish for disease. Stress in the body. It's a petri dish for disease. Okay? So if you're in a constant state of negativity and stress, your DNA coils in, like tightens up. But if you're relaxed and positive, your DNA stretches out. It's an alive thing that you have the power to affect. So when you're saying and blaming and you keep that story, you're saying, I have no power. And I have no ability to change anything in my life. When in fact you do have power, and in fact you can change everything in your life. Now, when things go wrong in our lives, do other people play a part? Yes. Is there a link? Yes. But in terms of your personal work, they're not your concern. You are your concern. All of what's happening out here, this experience, is just feedback. It's just feedback so that you can make an adjustment, so that something can change. It's just feedback. Use the feedback, change something, go back, because guess what? We are the cause of our own effect. We are the cause of our experience. It's not the other way around. We're responsible for every little bit of it. Now, that doesn't take away that the person that's, quote unquote, causing you the conflict, that they don't have their own stuff to work on. Yes, they do. But that's for them. It's like what my understanding of forgiveness is, that I cannot make amends for the actions of others. I can only make amends for my actions. So forgiveness is between them and whoever and whatever they call God. Whatever God is for them. So again, their actions they're responsible for. I'm responsible for my actions. Okay? Now, what are those people doing that are causing you conflict? They're just bringing you awareness. Okay? They're pointing out the things within us that still need healing. That's the feedback that I'm talking about. Okay? So when I say, for example, this person is causing me conflict, And if I blame them, then I have no power to change anything within me. And instead, what I could be asking is, what is it about me that is causing me the conflict? Okay? Now, the real freedom comes when you can own your stuff, for not using the other word, when you own your stuff, right? And you can understand your stuff. Because again, going to the past, into your history, is so that there's understanding. When there's understanding, there's acceptance. If you can understand something, then you more than likely be able to accept it. Now, when you start understanding yourself, when you can start accepting yourself because you're owning your stuff, now what you're saying is, to me, that's where the real freedom is. Because what you're saying is that the keys to your happiness are no longer in anybody else's hands. They're in yours. You're no longer depending on this person, on that person, so that you can be who you are. Now you're free to be who you are. It's in your hands. Okay? There's a quote, right? Actually, let me give you some steps first of what we can do to do that. So one step that we can do is we can acknowledge. What do they say in AA? The first step is admitting there's a problem, right? So if we can acknowledge what's causing us conflict, right, then we can begin to understand it. It's the beginning step, acknowledging. You have to be willing to look at it. You have to be willing to see it. You have to be willing to face yourself. The next step, we're going to internalize. We're going to acknowledge what's causing us conflict. We're going to internalize. This is where you're going to have self-reflection, introspection. This is where you're going to begin the work, where you're going to start asking those really good questions. The questions that are going to get your mind to think creatively to get you out of the situation. Because what do we do when we're under the circumstances? When we're playing the victim, why me? Why me? Why me? This is not fair. Why did this happen to me? I'm a good person. Why me? Why me? But instead we can say, take ownership. What did I do to get myself here? What part did I play? How is this situation or experience trying to help me be a better me? What is this trying to teach me about me? Now, those questions are going to get your mind thinking to find a solution instead of just staying there, not moving, stuck. Then we want to accept. Whatever shows up, as you're asking these questions, just get to a place of acceptance. Accept whatever emerges. When you get to that place of acceptance, then you're saying to yourself, I'm willing to do this work. That's the first step. You're willing to do this work. Then we're going to begin to integrate what we're learning. As you do this work, little by little, okay, you start integrating more. Here's where the self-discipline is going to come in. Here's what Louise was talking about last week when it says, are you going to be so focused on your work that you're going to sacrifice, trade up, like Jamie talked about, trading up, something okay for something better, something good for something great. This is where you say, I'm going to be so focused on my work that I'm going to do whatever it takes. This is where the self-discipline comes in, which Louise touched on that last week. When some people are out partying, you're at home maybe reading a book or working or writing on your journal. Are you going to have that discipline? Then we're going to release. We start to release. As we do this work, and again, it's a journey, guys. It's not going to happen like this. I mean, for me, it took me 30 years to live the life that I was living. And it's only been 5 years since I've been doing things differently. So it's a journey. It takes time. So little by little, you begin to release your stuff, your pain, right? And then little by little, we start having more integration. Remember when we talked about harmony? We start having more and more harmony. We start integrating the feminine aspects with the masculine aspects. We start integrating the left brain with the right brain, the known with the unknown, logic and reason with like spirituality and metaphysical and strange things. We start integrating this stuff, okay? And we start becoming more and more whole. That's the journey we're on. That's the journey right there towards integration of self, uncovering and unfolding the higher self. Now, the only relationship, this is really what I want you to remember, the only relationship that you have to heal is the relationship with yourself. That's it. Because the other person doesn't really exist. The other person is just showing you what needs to be healed. When you become aware of this, okay, we realize that our conflicts and our experiences are simply, like I said, reflecting back the parts that need healing. So that's the relationship that you have to heal, the one with yourself. Wayne Dyer used to say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Okay? So, and Rumi said, when you awaken, the entire world awakens with you. Because as you begin to see your true self, you start to see the true self in everybody. Because we're all the same. We're all one. What limits us is the personality, the thoughts. Okay? I love one of the metaphors that Kent shared with me, and I don't know if you heard it here. He says, if there's a child that comes to you and he's holding a dog, and you go and pet the dog, and the dog bites you or barks at you, are you going to blame the child for that? That's just what they're carrying. We're all carrying a dog. We'll call it the dog of pain. And that dog has a defense mechanism for every situation that makes us or reminds us of that pain. And it's going to bark and it's going to bite. But I'm not going to blame the person for that. That's just the pain they're carrying. And that's just in their personality. That is not who they are. They don't know any better. Okay? Now, there's a quote that I really, really enjoyed, and it's from a cartoon. I love cartoons. And I learned a lot from movies. I learned a lot from... In fact, I have a journal full of pages from just this cartoon. It's 2 seasons long, and I think you could... I highly recommend it. It was a Nickelodeon series called Avatar: The Last Airbender. Okay? In fact, this little cartoon taught me so much about the chakras, more so than any other teacher could have taught me. It's really good. And in there's a teacher teaching one of the characters in the show. He says, you have to free yourself from the other self so that your true self can reveal itself. You have to free yourself from your other self so that your true self can reveal itself. That's one of my favorites. All right? But what is this other self? We talked about it a little bit. Is the person you think you are. That's the other self. The one that's composed of beliefs, concepts, ideas, thoughts, limiting thoughts at that. Beliefs, norms, value systems, expectations, assumptions. That's the fears. That's the other self. And that's exactly what we need freedom from our other self. One of the biggest causes of conflict in our lives, and FYI, is food for a disease, is our own inability or rigidity or inflexibility of our beliefs. The fact that we're not willing to say, is this even true? Do I really believe? Is this even my belief? When we're faced with something that, for example, I could sit here and say, I believe life is square. Here comes Jody and says life is round. Well, now I'm going to have a conflict because that goes against my beliefs. It goes against my value system. It's an opposing view. And then I'm going to have this need, because don't we have the need to defend our beliefs? No, I'm right. Life is square. He's like, no, life is round. But that is not even the issue here. The issue here is, what is it about my beliefs that is preventing me from accepting round? That's the issue here. It's not that round is wrong or right. It's that my belief is imprisoning me from accepting round. Because the truth is, you don't see life for the way it is. You see life the way your beliefs limit you to see it. That's it. You're filtering your experience, whether you're projecting out or receiving, it's all filtered through your beliefs. Your beliefs determine what you see and how you see it. Now, I was watching this documentary on science. It was called The Science of Light. And it was about Einstein and Bohr and Marx, and they were trying to understand the behavior of their electrons. Okay? They couldn't understand it. Okay? They came at it from every possible angle they knew how. Finally, they decided, guys, if we're really going to understand this, we're going to have to throw away our knowledge. We're going to have to throw away everything we've known to really understanding. And that's what they had to do. If you really want to understand something, you have to be willing to throw away what you've believed about that something. so that you can see the truth about that something, not the belief you have about that something. So again, if we can understand that our conflicts are the perfect scenarios for liberation and change to occur, you'll experience emotional freedom. And emotional freedom is peace of mind. So you'll be at peace. And as things come at you, you'll be able to handle them in a way better way than you did before. And to me, I was listening to Bob Marley this morning, Redemption Song, right? So in the words of the great Bob Marley, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Guys, there's real freedom in freeing ourselves from the opinions of others. But the real freedom is when you can free yourself from the opinions of yourself. Okay? Now, I want to invite you guys to do an exercise with me, okay? It's an inner child exercise. But before we do that, I want you to hear from a child first, okay? So the kids were upstairs doing some painting, and Angela's going to share what she drew.
This is me and my mom and my dad swimming in the pool.
And what does that mean?
It means that I love my mom and dad.
And why'd you draw that?
Because I like swimming with my mom and dad.
That's awesome. Thank you, honey. See? That's what it's about. The little things that we do as children. And so if you go and look around, there's tables in the back, and there's paper, and there's crayons in the table. Now, what I want you to do is to draw yourself on that paper. You can sit at whatever table you want, and you're going to draw yourself on that paper as a child, okay? And add any image, any words, anything you want that you wanted as a child. How did you want your life to be? It could be a moment. It could be an overall picture. Just go to town. Just be creative and just draw yourself as a child the way you want it to be. Can we do that? All right. Have fun. And then we'll come back together in a little bit. I'll give you some time to do that. Break. This exercise is just to show you that what happened is not the end. What happened is not finite. If any of you saw the movie Captain America: The Civil War, did anybody see that? I'm not going to give you the movie, but I will tell you this scene. There was a scene where Tony Stark you don't even know that this is happening, but Tony Stark is a young Tony Stark. And he's in a memory of him, his mother, and his father. And as you know, Tony Stark's father was the main scientist guy, and Tony just kind of took over. But it's a young Tony, and he has to say goodbye to his dad because his dad was always going on to government contracts, dangerous things. And he didn't want to. He didn't want to say bye. He didn't want to say nothing to his dad. And his mom says, Tony, tell him, please. You may never see him again. So he says, all right, fine, teenager. I love you, Dad. And I think the dad said, I love you too. And the scene freezes. And adult Tony Stark shows up. And it's like, well, that's how I wanted it to go. Because that's not how it went. And he was talking about a technology that he was developing where you can go to any memory in your life and you can change the story and make it whatever you wanted it to be. And that's what this is about. It's easy to hold on to the negative and everything we didn't receive. We tend to focus on what we didn't receive. But we can look at what we did receive, or the adult self can give the child what he wanted to receive. And when the adult takes care of the child frees the adult.
So we wanted to end on a positive note, and I'm going to invite you guys, if you want to, you can close your eyes or whatever you feel comfortable with. And this is just a prayer for us today. It's just a prayer of affirmation for ourselves and our life. So today I recognize that there is one life, one love that lives and moves in and through us all. This force for good is the love and life of God. I know that I am one with this power. I'm one with this love. I am one with this force for good. Today, I live and move and have my being in this love. I say yes to perfect health, harmony, prosperity, divine order, and connection. I am grateful for wholeness and well-being. Today, I live in love. Love surrounds me, holds me, moves through me, as me. I give this love to everyone I encounter. I allow all of the beauty of God to manifest in my life today. I release and I let Spirit do its perfect work. I trust that love will accomplish the good work in me. And so it is. Amen. So before you leave, if you feel like it, hug somebody you don't know, shake their hand.